At the heart of every toxic relationship lies a deeper, often hidden reality. Toxicity is not always a conscious choice, but a byproduct of inner struggles, psychological wounds, unmet needs, or deep-rooted insecurities. To begin untangling the web of toxic behavior, we must first understand the human condition, our flaws, our vulnerabilities, and the complex ways in which our personal histories and unaddressed emotional scars shape our actions. It is essential to approach the concept of toxicity with a sense of empathy. Human beings, by nature, are flawed. These imperfections are part of what makes us inherently human. We are not born perfect, nor are we expected to be. Flaws can manifest in many ways: anger, jealousy, pride, self-doubt, or a tendency to manipulate others. These are not inherently toxic in themselves. They are simply the result of our conditioning, experiences, and the burdens we carry. Flaws are often deeply tied to personal histories. Our family dynamics, societal expectations, childhood experiences, and even biological predispositions. Take, for instance, a person who grew up in an environment where emotional expression was discouraged. They may struggle with communication in relationships, bottling up feelings until they erupt in outbursts of anger or passive-aggressive behavior. The emotional repression in their upbringing isn't necessarily toxic in and of itself. It's the lack of tools or understanding to navigate those feelings in healthy ways that creates toxic behavior. In this sense, toxicity can be seen as a manifestation of human imperfection. It becomes problematic when it leads to patterns that cause harm, either to oneself or others. The difference between a human flaw and toxic behavior lies in the consistency and impact of the actions. While occasional emotional outbursts or selfishness are normal, it's when these behaviors become a habitual way of interacting with others that they cross the line into toxicity. Beneath toxic behavior often lies vulnerability, pain, fear, insecurity, or past trauma that a person may not even be fully conscious of. When we explore human nature, we find that people often act out of a need to protect themselves, even if it comes at the expense of others. Toxic behavior can be a defense mechanism, a way to shield fragile egos from being exposed to the world's harsh judgments or from confronting inner turmoil. For instance, a person who constantly belittles others may be deeply insecure about their own worth. They may have learned early in life that to feel powerful or in control, they needed to diminish those around them. This behavior might not be deliberate malice, but an unconscious coping strategy, a way to navigate their own vulnerability. The outward manifestation of toxic behavior, mockery, manipulation, or emotional control, is simply the shield protecting the deep, unhealed wounds within. Acknowledging vulnerability in toxic people invites us to see them not just as aggressors, but as wounded beings. This perspective can soften our approach to understanding their actions. It doesn't mean we should accept harmful behavior, but it does invite us to reflect on how deep-seated vulnerabilities can trigger defensive mechanisms that become toxic over time. Philosophically, this approach echoes the concept of original sin, or the idea that all humans are born with an inherent capacity for both good and bad. Toxicity, therefore, is not some fixed trait of certain people, but rather a potential that all human beings can fall into when their vulnerabilities are left unchecked. So, how can we differentiate between human imperfections and harmful toxic patterns? This distinction is crucial in understanding when to offer compassion and when to distance ourselves. The key lies in awareness and intent. An unavoidable imperfection is something temporary, a flaw that a person can acknowledge and work through. It's a single moment of poor judgment, a lapse in emotional regulation, or an isolated act of selfishness. These flaws can often be forgiven, as they reflect a momentary divergence from one's true self, a misstep in an otherwise healthy relationship. If someone recognizes their mistake, feels remorse, and is willing to make amends, this flaw is just that, an imperfection, not toxicity. However, harmful patterns are different. These are recurring behaviors that consistently undermine others, lead to emotional or psychological harm, and persist despite feedback or attempts at change. They are not accidental, but represent a way of being in the world, a strategy for navigating relationships that harms rather than nurtures. A toxic individual may repeatedly gaslight, manipulate, or belittle others without remorse, consistently finding ways to evade responsibility for their actions. To illustrate this, imagine two people. One makes a careless comment in the heat of an argument, only to apologize later, acknowledging their error. The other constantly criticizes and undermines their partner's self-worth, finding ways to do so even when the partner asks them to stop. The first is displaying an imperfection. The second is embodying a harmful pattern of toxic behavior. The first is something that can be forgiven and worked through, while the second requires a serious reevaluation of the relationship's health. Recognizing the difference between these two realities, imperfections versus toxic patterns, helps us approach relationships with clarity. It encourages us to not be overly harsh on human frailties, while also not enabling behavior that leads to harm. Philosophy teaches us the importance of discernment and wisdom, knowing when to show grace and when to protect ourselves from further harm. Understanding the roots of toxicity in others requires a level of self-awareness as well. It asks us to reflect not only on the flaws of others, but on our own vulnerabilities and the ways in which we may, at times, exhibit toxic behaviors. Are we reacting from a place of fear? Are we projecting our insecurities onto others? This self-reflection is crucial in breaking the cycle of toxicity, both personally and relationally. It allows us to recognize when we, too, may be perpetuating harmful patterns. By understanding that all humans are flawed, and that flaws are often linked to deeper wounds, we gain the wisdom to approach toxicity with empathy. We no longer see toxic people as enemies, but as individuals struggling with their own inner battles. This perspective fosters forgiveness, but also helps us set the necessary boundaries to protect our own well-being. In sum, recognizing the root of toxicity is not simply about labeling others as toxic, but about understanding the nature of human imperfection. By peeling back the layers of behavior, we see that behind the toxic actions are individuals grappling with their own pain and struggles. This insight does not require us to excuse harmful behavior, but it can transform our response to it, allowing for greater empathy, understanding, and ultimately the ability to make more informed decisions about the people we allow into our lives. By differentiating between unavoidable imperfections and harmful patterns, we empower ourselves to take action in a more mindful and compassionate way, protecting our inner peace while also fostering an environment of growth for those around us. Understanding the complexities of human nature is the first step toward creating healthier relationships and finding the wisdom to let go of those whose behavior no longer serves us. This concludes our video on how to recognize the root of toxic people. Subscribe to receive a notification for our next video, which covers how to detach from ego to help get rid of toxic people in your life. One of the most profound ways to practice self-preservation is by setting healthy boundaries, particularly when it comes to toxic people in your life. Toxic individuals, whether they are friends, family members, co-workers, or acquaintances, can drain your energy, destabilize your emotions, and challenge your sense of self-worth. In this philosophical exploration, we will dive into the Stoic idea of protecting one's tranquility and how this can be applied to the modern-day challenge of dealing with toxic people. The necessity of preserving one's inner peace is rooted in the idea that we cannot control everything that happens to us, but we can control how we respond to it. This concept has been central to numerous philosophical schools of thought, including Stoicism, Buddhism, and various forms of modern psychology. The underlying theme is that peace is a state of mind, one that must be actively nurtured and protected. When you allow external circumstances, especially toxic people, to disrupt your inner peace, you are sacrificing the control and harmony that are necessary for a fulfilling life. preserving inner peace requires self-awareness and discernment. You must learn to recognize what disrupts your tranquility and take proactive steps to protect it. The key to this process lies in the ability to recognize the sources of toxicity in your life and to distinguish between things you can control and those you cannot. Toxic people often create turmoil through manipulation, emotional instability, or negative energy. When you prioritize your inner peace, you are essentially choosing to protect yourself from these harmful influences. Stoicism, an ancient Greek philosophy, offers valuable insights into how we can preserve our inner peace, particularly in challenging situations. According to the Stoics, tranquility is not found in avoiding external conflict, but in how we respond to it. In fact, the Stoic philosopher Epictetus famously stated, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." This emphasizes the importance of focusing on what is within your control, your thoughts, actions, and reactions, rather than trying to control or change external circumstances, which are often beyond your influence. The Stoic approach to inner peace centers on the concept of ataraxia, which means a state of serene calmness and freedom from emotional disturbance. For the Stoics, achieving this tranquility is not about avoiding challenges or difficult people, but about cultivating the ability to remain steady in the face of adversity. They believe that by practicing virtue, understanding what is truly important in life, and accepting what is beyond our control, we can maintain our inner peace regardless of external circumstances. One of the Stoic practices that directly applies to preserving your peace in the face of toxic people is the idea of setting boundaries, not just with others but also within your own mind. Stoics teach the importance of maintaining internal space for reflection, wisdom, and judgment, even when external events threaten to overwhelm us. By applying this to our modern lives, we can learn to set boundaries that protect our emotional and mental well-being. Setting boundaries is a practical tool that can be used to safeguard your inner peace from the intrusion of toxic people. Toxic individuals tend to overstep boundaries, manipulate situations, or demand emotional energy from others without regard for their well-being. They may use guilt, shame, or emotional coercion to maintain control over you, often leaving you feeling drained or conflicted. The idea of boundaries can be philosophically traced back to the Stoics, who believed in protecting their emotional space through self-discipline. The Stoics viewed external influences as things to be filtered through reason and choice. In a sense, they set an internal boundary, making conscious decisions about what they allowed to enter their hearts and minds. While Stoicism encourages us to accept the things we cannot control, it also encourages us to take charge of our internal world, preventing external disturbances from eroding our peace. When you deal with toxic people, setting clear, firm boundaries is a key practice in ensuring your tranquility. Boundaries can be emotional, physical, or psychological, and they are essential for maintaining healthy relationships and protecting your energy. These boundaries should be communicated assertively and respectfully, without the need for justifying or defending yourself. For example, if a toxic friend or family member constantly undermines your self-worth or manipulates you, setting a boundary might involve limiting your interactions with them or being clear about what behavior is unacceptable. By doing so, you are protecting yourself from further harm and asserting control over your emotional and mental state. Another vital concept in preserving inner peace is detachment. Detachment, particularly from the ego and from the outcomes of interactions with toxic people, can create emotional freedom and resilience. When you detach, you cease to tie your self-worth to the behavior or opinions of others. Instead of reacting defensively or emotionally, detachment allows you to observe situations with a sense of clarity and objectivity. From a Stoic perspective, detachment is crucial for maintaining tranquility. The Stoics believed in distinguishing between what is within our control and what is not. When it comes to toxic people, their behavior is beyond your control, but your response is always within your power. Detaching from the ego helps you let go of the need to prove yourself, seek validation, or engage in emotionally charged reactions. This detachment is not about becoming cold or indifferent. Rather, it is about choosing to protect your peace by not allowing external negativity to disturb your internal equilibrium. When you detach from toxic people, you are not abandoning them, but rather choosing to step away from their influence. You stop internalizing their behavior, no longer letting their negativity dictate your emotional state. This allows you to respond with calmness and clarity rather than reacting impulsively or out of emotional pain. Prioritizing your inner peace also requires practicing self-compassion. Toxic people often create an environment in which you second-guess yourself or feel inadequate. They may trigger self-doubt, guilt, or shame, all of which can disrupt your inner peace. However, self-compassion involves treating yourself with the same kindness, care, and understanding that you would offer a close friend. When you practice self-compassion, you acknowledge your worth and set limits that protect your emotional health. You allow yourself the grace to say no when necessary, and recognize that you deserve to be treated with respect and kindness. Self-compassion is essential in breaking free from the cycles of guilt or emotional manipulation that toxic people often impose. In philosophical terms, self-compassion ties back to the concept of self-respect and self-ownership. The Stoics believed that true peace comes from accepting responsibility for one's life and actions, while also embracing the inherent value of being a human being. To prioritize your peace, you must first respect yourself enough to protect your mental, emotional, and physical well-being from harm. Ultimately, the goal of preserving your inner peace is to create a life that is centered, calm, and empowered. Toxic people may always exist in the world, but how you respond to them is within your control. By following the Stoic practice of detachment, setting healthy boundaries, and cultivating self-compassion, you can move through life with clarity and confidence, no longer allowing others to rob you of your peace. Self-preservation isn't about isolating yourself from others or avoiding conflict at all costs. It's about recognizing the importance of your mental and emotional health and taking proactive steps to protect it. When you prioritize your inner peace, you allow yourself the space to grow, heal, and create meaningful, positive connections with those who truly add value to your life. By embracing the principles of self-preservation, detachment, and boundary setting, you can create a life where peace is not a fleeting state, but a lasting foundation. The path to preserving your inner peace starts with you, and it's through this commitment to your well-being that you can truly thrive, free from the influence of toxic people. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. You'll receive a notification for our next video in this series, which will cover how to let go of toxic people in your life with empathy. Thanks for watching. In this video, we're going to explore 15 powerful and compassionate ways to cut ties with toxic people. While the journey is never easy, we'll provide you with a toolkit to navigate this process with empathy, compassion, and strength, helping you overcome the 5 most common struggles people face when letting go of toxic individuals: guilt and self-doubt, fear of isolation or loneliness, codependency, manipulation and gaslighting, and difficulty with setting boundaries. Letting go of toxic people is one of the most challenging yet liberating decisions a person can make. Whether it's a friend, family member, romantic partner, or colleague, toxic relationships have the power to drain your energy, undermine your confidence, and negatively affect your mental and emotional well-being. However, as difficult as it may seem, letting go of these toxic individuals is often essential for your personal growth and happiness. The first step in letting go of a toxic person is to acknowledge the emotions that come up during this process. It's completely natural to feel guilty, sad, or confused. But remember that your feelings are valid. By allowing yourself to feel these emotions without judgment, you're creating the space for healing to begin. This helps with the first issue, guilt and self-doubt, by reminding you that it's okay to feel conflicted while making a difficult decision for your well-being. A toxic relationship often undermines your sense of self-worth. To let go of such people, you must reconnect with your value and remember that you deserve respect, kindness, and love. By practicing self-love and affirming your worth regularly, you can start to overcome feelings of self-doubt and begin to prioritize your own emotional health. Setting boundaries is one of the most powerful tools you have for letting go of toxic people. Boundaries protect your emotional space and prevent others from overstepping their limits. While it may feel uncomfortable at first, practicing healthy boundaries will help you in the long run by minimizing the impact of toxic behavior. This helps address difficulty with setting boundaries, an issue many people struggle with when they fear being labeled as selfish or mean. Letting go of a toxic person doesn't make you a bad person. In fact, it's an act of self-care and courage. Remind yourself that you have the right to remove anyone from your life who causes you harm, no matter how long you've known them or how close they are. Recognizing this fact helps address guilt, as it's important to internalize that you're doing what's best for you. When we become codependent in a relationship, we lose sight of our ability to function independently. Emotional independence involves learning to validate your own feelings, make decisions on your own, and develop self-reliance. By practicing this, you can slowly break free from codependency, which will help you overcome the fear of being unable to function without the toxic person. If possible, communicate your decision to the toxic individual with clarity and calmness. You don't need to justify or explain yourself in detail, but a direct and assertive message can help prevent misunderstandings and manipulative tactics. This tactic helps address manipulation because it allows you to stay grounded and assertive in your decision without falling prey to guilt-tripping or emotional coercion. Toxic people often make us question our perceptions of reality, leading us into a pattern of self-doubt. Trusting your gut is crucial in cutting ties. If something doesn't feel right, it likely isn't. You are your best advocate, so trust your instincts to guide you through the process of letting go and remind yourself that your feelings are valid. Surround yourself with supportive people who uplift and validate your decision. Having a strong support system helps alleviate the fear of isolation and provides you with the reassurance that you are not alone in this process. These trusted individuals can also help you stay accountable and grounded as you navigate your emotions. No relationship is perfect, but when a relationship becomes toxic, it no longer serves its purpose. Let go of the idea that you need to fix or save someone. You are not responsible for someone else's growth or happiness, only your own. This mindset shift can help with guilt by reinforcing the idea that the relationship is unhealthy for both parties, not just you. When making the decision to let go of someone toxic, it's important to be kind to yourself. Acknowledge that this process is difficult and requires immense courage. Practicing self-compassion involves treating yourself with kindness, patience, and understanding, just as you would treat a close friend in the same situation. This can be immensely helpful for managing self-doubt and the emotional toll that cutting ties can take. Letting go of a toxic person, even one who has caused pain, often involves a period of grief. This grief may arise from the loss of the relationship or from the realization that you were treated unfairly. Allow yourself time to mourn, but remember that grief is a natural part of healing. By honoring your emotions, you can address the fear of loneliness and help yourself process the loss in a healthy way. In many cases, toxic people trigger negative emotions or responses within us. To create emotional distance, it's important to remove these triggers where possible. Whether it's unfollowing them on social media, deleting old messages, or distancing yourself from places associated with them, creating space will help you emotionally detach and can also minimize the effects of gaslighting and manipulation. Forgiveness is not about excusing bad behavior. It's about releasing yourself from the hold that the toxic person has over you. By forgiving yourself for staying in the relationship longer than you should have, or for not setting boundaries earlier, you free yourself from regret. This practice can be a powerful tool for overcoming self-doubt and starting fresh. Visualizing your life without the toxic person can help you feel empowered to move forward. Focus on the positive changes that can come from letting go, such as new opportunities for growth, healthy relationships, and peace of mind. This vision can help you overcome feelings of fear of isolation by reminding you that your life will be better without toxic influences. Lastly, after cutting ties, engage in self-care practices that nourish your body, mind, and soul. Whether it's journaling, meditation, therapy, or exercise, taking care of yourself helps you rebuild your emotional strength. By focusing on healing, you reinforce your personal power and resilience. Letting go of toxic people is a brave, empowering step toward creating a healthier, happier life. By practicing empathy and compassion for yourself and others, you can navigate the complex emotions and challenges that arise during this process. Whether you're battling guilt and self-doubt, fear of loneliness, codependency, manipulation, or boundary-setting issues, these strategies can help you move forward with clarity and strength. Remember that cutting ties with toxic people is not about vengeance or anger. It's about making space for the relationships, experiences, and opportunities that nurture you. Trust in your ability to make this choice, honor your emotions, and ultimately empower yourself to live a life free from toxicity. You deserve peace, happiness, and a supportive environment. Don't be afraid to reclaim your power. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. You'll receive a notification for the next video in this series on the art of boundaries, which teaches how to set limits with wisdom when letting go of toxic people. Thanks for watching. When dealing with toxic people, the first and perhaps most important shift we can make is to detach ourselves from our ego. Toxicity often stems from a place of wounded egos, and the more we allow our egos to engage with toxic behavior, the more power we give to those negative dynamics. Learning to detach from the ego isn't just about ignoring the actions of others, but about fostering a mindset that helps us see beyond personal attacks and not allow these behaviors to define us. This is the foundation for not only protecting our emotional well-being, but also for extricating ourselves from toxic people in a healthy, empowered way. At its core, the ego is the part of ourselves that craves validation, recognition, and control. It is the identity we construct for ourselves in relation to the world around us, shaped by experiences, beliefs, and often the need for approval. The ego thrives on being seen in a positive light, and when this image is threatened, whether by criticism, betrayal, or rejection, the ego reacts defensively. These reactions often fuel toxic behavior, both in ourselves and in others. Toxic people often act from a place of insecurity, and their behavior is a reflection of their struggle with their own ego. Whether it's a need to dominate others, belittle those they perceive as threats, or manipulate situations to maintain control, their actions are deeply connected to an unaddressed sense of self-doubt. The more they feel their ego is under attack or insufficient, the more they seek to elevate themselves by tearing others down. For instance, a person who constantly criticizes or belittles you may do so because they feel inadequate and believe that lowering you will somehow raise their own self-worth. This isn't an excuse for their behavior, but understanding this psychological dynamic can help us disengage emotionally. When we understand that these attacks are driven by someone's insecurities, we can stop seeing them as personal assaults and start recognizing them as manifestations of their inner turmoil. Toxic behavior often arises when people's egos are starved for validation. The need for constant attention, approval, or affirmation becomes an insatiable hunger. Toxic individuals often seek to manipulate others to get the validation they crave, whether through praise, affection, or controlling relationships. They may gaslight you, criticize you, or guilt trip you in an attempt to maintain power and make you question your worth. Their constant need for approval is not a reflection of your value, it is an expression of their own emotional immaturity and insecurity. When you begin to detach from your ego, you no longer rely on external validation to feel good about yourself. The validation you seek should come from within. You start to recognize that your worth is not defined by the opinions, approval, or criticism of others. By fostering internal validation, you build a resilience to toxic behavior. No longer are you emotionally dependent on the praise or approval of others to feel okay about yourself. This sense of self-worth becomes your shield against toxicity, allowing you to navigate relationships with more clarity and self-assurance. Detaching from ego is not about becoming indifferent or disengaged from relationships. It's about cultivating a mindset that allows you to observe toxic behavior without internalizing it or reacting from a place of hurt. When you are attached to your ego, you take toxic behavior personally. You feel offended, defensive, and angry because you believe that the attacks on you are direct reflections of your worth. The more attached you are to your ego, the more power you give to others to hurt you. Detachment is not about suppressing emotions or denying hurt. Instead, it's about creating enough emotional distance to observe the situation with clarity, without the clouded judgment that comes from an ego-driven response. It allows you to take a step back, examine the behavior objectively, and choose how to respond rather than react impulsively. One of the ways to begin cultivating this mindset of detachment is through mindfulness. When you practice mindfulness, you learn to observe your thoughts and emotions without becoming attached to them. You recognize when your ego is being triggered, perhaps through anger, hurt, or defensiveness, and you allow yourself the space to breathe and reflect. In moments of toxicity, this practice helps you pause and ask yourself, is this attack a reflection of my true self, or is it a reflection of their inner struggles? With this clarity, you can distance yourself from the situation and make decisions rooted in your inner peace rather than in the emotional turmoil that toxic people often provoke. One of the most powerful tools in detaching from ego is non-reactivity. Toxic people thrive on reactions. They want to see you angry, upset, or defensive, as it validates their sense of power and control. When you react emotionally to their behavior, you are giving them exactly what they want: your energy and your emotional resources. By learning the power of non-reactivity, you stop giving them this control. Non-reactivity is not about suppressing your emotions, but about consciously choosing not to be manipulated by them. It's about responding thoughtfully rather than impulsively. When someone says something hurtful, instead of immediately defending yourself or lashing out, you take a deep breath, center yourself, and choose a response that aligns with your values and emotional health. You might calmly set a boundary, express your feelings without aggression, or in some cases, choose not to engage at all. The ability to remain calm in the face of provocation is an act of emotional mastery. It demonstrates that you are no longer emotionally dependent on the behavior of others to dictate your mood or self-worth. It's a clear signal to the toxic person that their attempts to manipulate or control you will not succeed. Non-reactivity gives you the space to disengage emotionally and regain control over how you choose to interact with the world around you. Forgiveness is another key element in detaching from ego. Often, when someone behaves toxically, the impulse is to retaliate, to get revenge, or to harbor resentment. This response is rooted in the ego's desire for justice or validation. We want to make them feel what we've felt, to prove that we are not to be trifled with. However, this mindset only perpetuates the cycle of toxicity and keeps us bound to the negative energy of the situation. Forgiveness is not about condoning the toxic behavior, nor is it about reconciling with someone who continues to hurt you. Forgiveness is an act of liberation. It's about freeing yourself from the emotional prison of resentment. When you forgive, you are not saying, "What you did is okay." You are saying, "I refuse to let your actions control my emotions any longer." Forgiveness allows you to detach from the need for revenge or retribution and frees you from the weight of emotional attachment to toxic people. Forgiveness is also a means of healing for yourself. Holding on to anger and resentment only continues to feed the ego's desire for control and justice. In contrast, forgiveness allows you to release that hold and move on with your life. It is a powerful tool for reclaiming your energy and emotional well-being. As you learn to detach from your ego, you also become better at setting healthy boundaries. When you are emotionally attached to the ego, boundaries can be difficult to establish because you fear rejection or conflict. However, when you are no longer driven by the need for validation or approval, boundaries become a tool of self-respect, not a defense mechanism. Healthy boundaries are about protecting your emotional and psychological space. They are not about punishing others, but about preserving your well-being. When you detach from your ego, you become less concerned with how others perceive you and more focused on your own peace. This shift makes it easier to say no, to walk away, or to distance yourself from individuals who continue to drain your energy or cause harm. By setting clear and firm boundaries, you communicate to others that you will no longer tolerate toxic behavior. This not only protects you, but also helps to create healthier, more balanced relationships. Detaching from the ego is a powerful strategy for removing toxic people from your life. When you stop taking things personally, when you stop reacting to every insult or slight, and when you stop seeking validation from others, you free yourself from the emotional grip that toxic individuals can have on you. This detachment doesn't mean becoming cold or indifferent. It means seeing beyond the ego's need for validation and realizing that toxic behavior is a reflection of the other person's struggles, not your worth. The more you practice detachment, the more you protect your inner peace. You begin to choose your responses with wisdom and compassion, both toward yourself and others. Detaching from ego allows you to make decisions from a place of clarity, which empowers you to create the boundaries necessary to preserve your well-being and to remove toxic individuals from your life. In doing so, you create space for relationships that are rooted in mutual respect, understanding, and emotional health. Did you like the video? If so, please make sure to like and subscribe. It helps me out a ton. If you subscribe, you'll receive a notification for the next video in this series, which will focus on the principle of self-preservation and how to prioritize your inner peace when getting rid of toxic people in your life. Letting go of toxic people is never easy. Whether it's a romantic partner, family member, friend, or colleague, ending a relationship with someone who has caused you pain can feel like an emotional minefield. The internal struggle is real, as it often comes with feelings of guilt and self-doubt, the fear of isolation or loneliness, codependency, and the weight of emotional attachment. You may also face significant real-world challenges, such as financial dependency, shared custody of children, or even fear of retaliation from the person you are trying to distance yourself from. One of the most vital tools you can use during this process is learning how to set clear, firm boundaries. This isn't just about putting physical distance between you and the toxic person. It's about reclaiming your emotional well-being, your peace of mind, and your power. But setting boundaries, especially when you are still emotionally entangled with someone, can be challenging. In this guide, we'll walk through how to set limits with wisdom and compassion, while also addressing the emotional and practical obstacles that complicate letting go. It's a journey of healing, and one that requires patience, self-compassion, and courage. Let's dive in. Before you can set boundaries, you must first recognize why they're necessary. The toxic person in your life may have repeatedly overstepped emotional, mental, or even physical boundaries. This could look like constant criticism, manipulative behavior, disrespect of your time, or even gaslighting you into doubting your own experiences. In many cases, codependency has developed. You may find yourself emotionally reliant on the toxic person for validation, attention, or approval, which makes it incredibly difficult to break free. You might feel responsible for their well-being or hope that they will change someday. But setting boundaries isn't about punishing them. It's about protecting your own emotional and mental health. It's an act of self-respect. Letting go of toxic people often involves a deep emotional attachment, especially if you've been involved with them for years. You may have a history together, filled with shared memories and experiences. This can create a grief and loss of the relationship that makes it even harder to walk away. You may feel torn between the love you once shared and the painful reality of their behavior. It's important to honor these emotions while also recognizing that attachment doesn't mean tolerance for mistreatment. Emotional manipulation and gaslighting may have been part of the dynamic, causing confusion about whether your feelings and perceptions are valid. Remind yourself that it's okay to feel sadness and even guilt, but that doesn't make the decision to set boundaries wrong. As you prepare to set boundaries, you also need to understand the real-world complications that may make this process more difficult. Perhaps you are financially dependent on the toxic person, and breaking away feels like an impossible feat. You might share children or legal custody, which ties you to them in ways that feel suffocating. Maybe you share a living situation, making it challenging to physically separate. In some cases, social circle influence can complicate things further. If you have mutual friends or a shared community, it may feel like the decision to sever ties will be scrutinized, leading to concerns about judgment or gossip. Family ties, especially with a parent or sibling, can make it feel like you are betraying your family or being disloyal. And in some situations, shared business interests or professional ties may make separating from the toxic person feel like a logistical nightmare. While these real-world issues add layers of complexity, it's essential to recognize them as part of the journey rather than insurmountable obstacles. Setting boundaries isn't just about the emotional aspect. It's also about protecting yourself in practical ways. You can break down these challenges step by step, and doing so will give you the space you need to prioritize your well-being. Once you've recognized the need for boundaries and understood the practical challenges, the next step is to communicate your boundaries clearly and assertively. This is often one of the hardest parts, especially if you're dealing with someone who has been manipulative or emotionally abusive. Fear of confrontation is real, and you might worry that they will react with anger or guilt, trip you into feeling bad for taking care of yourself. But here's the key. You don't owe anyone an explanation for why you need boundaries. You have every right to protect your peace. When communicating your boundaries, keep it simple, direct, and firm. For example, you might say, "I need some space right now and I cannot engage in conversations about specific topic anymore." You don't need to justify yourself or explain every detail of your decision. You are entitled to create emotional distance, especially when it's a matter of your mental health. One of the most common challenges when setting boundaries with toxic people is the potential for manipulation or retaliation. Toxic individuals often react to boundaries with anger, guilt, or attempts to undermine your decision. They may use emotional blackmail to try and keep you in the relationship. You might hear things like, "You're being selfish," "You'll regret this," or "You'll never find someone who cares about you like I do." Stay grounded in your decision and remember that their reaction is about their inability to respect your boundaries, not a reflection of your worth. If you are financially tied to them, they might even try to use money or resources as a tool to manipulate you. Similarly, if you share children or custody, they might try to guilt trip you with concerns about how your decision will affect the family. Expect these reactions and prepare yourself emotionally. If needed, have a support system in place to help you stay focused. If you're finding it incredibly difficult to set boundaries, or if manipulation and gaslighting are part of the toxic dynamic, seeking professional help can be a game changer. A therapist or counselor can help you navigate the emotional and psychological aspects of setting boundaries and teach you how to communicate your needs more effectively. They can also help you work through any self-doubt or feelings of guilt that might arise. Sometimes, the toxic person may be so ingrained in your life that it's hard to trust your own judgment. A mental health professional can provide clarity and a safe space to talk through your feelings without fear of judgment. One of the most emotionally intense aspects of setting boundaries with a toxic person is the grief you'll feel as the relationship changes or ends. Even if you know it's for the best, it's normal to feel sadness, anger, and even regret. You may feel like you're losing a piece of your life, and the hope for change can linger. The key to navigating this grief is to allow yourself to feel those emotions without letting them dictate your actions. It's okay to mourn the relationship, but it's also important to remember that you are doing this for your long-term emotional health. Honor your feelings while staying committed to your boundaries. When you start setting boundaries, particularly if you are severing ties with someone important in your life, the fear of isolation or loneliness can creep in. You might feel like you're losing your support network, or that no one will understand why you're distancing yourself. This is where building a new support system becomes essential. Surround yourself with people who respect your boundaries and uplift you. Whether it's friends, family members, or even support groups, having a network of compassionate individuals who understand and support your decision can provide the emotional reassurance you need during this difficult time. The most important part of setting boundaries is trusting yourself and your decision. You are the expert in your own life, and only you can determine what is healthy for you. Self-doubt can creep in, especially when people question your decision or when the toxic person tries to manipulate your feelings. But remember, you are not responsible for someone else's actions or emotions. You are responsible for your own well-being. Finally, once you've set your boundaries, it's essential to honor the space you've created. Whether it's physical, emotional, or both, give yourself permission to step away from the toxic person and allow room for healing. Be gentle with yourself during this process, and remember that healing isn't linear. There will be ups and downs, but every day you stay firm in your boundaries is a day you reclaim your personal power. Letting go of toxic people is not an overnight process. It requires time, patience, and a deep commitment to yourself. But by setting boundaries with wisdom and compassion, you are laying the foundation for a life filled with healthier relationships, emotional peace, and personal growth. Remember, the road may be difficult, but every step you take toward reclaiming your boundaries is a victory. You deserve to be surrounded by love, respect, and positive energy, and it's within your power to create that life. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. You'll receive a notification for our next video on Friedrich Nietzsche's concept of will to power and how to transform toxic relationships into opportunities for personal growth. Thanks for watching.